my grandfather had a fairly large herd of cattle. And one of the things that he would always do is ask us when we were children if we wanted to go out and feed the cows. And of course, you know, that was exciting. Feed the cows, yeah. So we would go out, and my grandfather would roll down the window of his truck, and he had a bucket of feed that he would hold out the window. We'd get out to a pasture. There'd be no cow in sight. They were all down in the woods. So he began to call out.
Ours is a lot less. It's just that.
And he had this certain call that he would call his cows. And the next thing you know, I mean, there were no cows in sight, and they're coming from everywhere, surrounding the truck, and he's just feeding them out, you know, through the window out of his hand. And that was a real treat for us when we were real young children. You know, the Bible uses a similar situation to describe God's relationship to his people. Instead of a farmer and his cattle, Jesus is shepherd, the shepherd of his sheep. And in the first century, the people of Israel would have known about sheep and shepherding better than a West Texas cattle rancher. I mean, sheep were part of their everyday lives. Sheep and shepherding touched every part of their culture. They were taught from childhood. The stories of Jacob tending his sheep, of young David defending his sheep from the bear and the lion. Those stories were being told from generation to generation. And so shepherding and sheep were part of the everyday lives. The religious leaders of Israel, the priests, were called the shepherds of God's people. In fact, the most significant holiday in the Jewish calendar, of course, wasn't Christmas or Thanksgiving or Easter. The most important holiday coincides with Easter, as we know it, but it's the Passover. And what's the centerpiece of the Passover celebration? The Passover lamb. So as Jesus begins to teach in John chapter 10 about sheep and shepherding, he was speaking to a crowd that were intimately aware of the analogy that he was using. But did they really understand what he was saying? Now, Jesus is going to use three different scenarios from the daily routine of shepherds to teach the crowd the difference between himself and the religious leaders of the day, those priests and Pharisees who were supposed to be the shepherds of the people, but were not. So what are the essential qualities of a good shepherd? What distinguishes Jesus from those others that we've mentioned? How is he the good shepherd? I realize that this description may fall into the category of the obvious, but let's consider the impact of who Jesus is to you and to me as we move along in our text today. So we're going to read from John chapter 10. And we're going to take this in sections today. So the first few verses, Jesus is speaking. He's teaching the people. He says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd. To him the gatekeeper opens, the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought all of his sheep out, when he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. What is Jesus talking about? All of a sudden, Jesus brings up this issue of shepherding and sheep. I mean, he had been teaching the crowds in Jerusalem. He had healed the blind man, and there was all kinds of teaching going on. In fact, you remember at the end of chapter 8, some of them wanted to stone him because he said, before Abraham was, I am. And they knew exactly what he was talking about. He claimed divinity. He claimed to be divine. He claimed to be equal with God. And now he's still in Jerusalem. He's still teaching. And this time he brings up this issue of sheep and shepherds. Let's take a little history lesson as if we're the folks in the crowd. What would they have known? What would they have been thinking when Jesus begins to talk about sheep and shepherding and leading out, and the sheep hearing his voice, and thieves and robbers that are not really shepherds? In Genesis chapter 48, Jacob has come to Egypt with his sons. And he's at the end of his life. And he knows he's going to die very soon. And he's going to offer a final blessing. But rather than giving the blessing to the oldest son, which was traditional, Jacob offers his blessing on the two sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. And here's what it says. In Genesis 48, verses 14 through 16, and Israel, now that's the other name of Jacob, remember that. Jacob was also called Israel. That's where the nation gets its name, from the name of Jacob. Now Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on the head of Ephraim, who was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh, crossing his hands, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, the God before whom my father Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who redeemed me from all evil, bless the boys. And in them let my name be carried on, and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. The Jews, these Israelites, would have been well aware of this great blessing from Jacob on the sons of Ephraim, sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. And this phrase that's in there when Jacob says, the God of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, he has been my shepherd all my life until this day. Then in Numbers chapter 27, Moses is soon going to die, and he is going to choose a successor. God is directing him to choose the successor who would come after him, Joshua. And the Lord is speaking to Moses in Numbers 27, verses 17 and following. And he says, who shall go out before them and come in before them? Who shall lead them out and bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord may not be as sheep that have no shepherd? The Lord said to Moses, take Joshua, the son of Nun, a man in whom is a spirit, and lay your hand on him. So in this exchange of power, this exchange of leadership, this kind of inauguration that's about to happen, again, God uses the framework of shepherding and sheep. In 2 Samuel chapter 5, verses 2 and 3, when King David is being brought into power by the people, Saul has finally been killed, and David is going to be anointed as king. The people come together in 2 Samuel 5, and they say in verse 2, in times past, when Saul was king over us, it was you, David, who led out and brought in Israel. Who does the leading out and the bringing in? The shepherd does that. They were already recognizing him as shepherd. In fact, that's what they're going to call him. And the Lord said to you, you shall be shepherd of my people Israel, and you shall be prince over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel. And of course we know David's great psalm, Psalm 23, when he writes, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. And the psalm continues. So what do we know about a good shepherd? And why is Jesus the one who fits that mold? As good shepherd, Jesus is our guide. He's the guide. He's the one to lead us out and to bring us in. And if he is our guide, then how am I following his lead? How am I following his lead? That's what Jesus was trying to get these Jews in first century Israel to understand, that he's the good shepherd. He's going to claim that title for himself in just a few more verses. But he's setting the stage. He's saying, listen, you've been following these Pharisees and these scribes and these priests who are leading you astray if they're not leading you to me, because I'm the good shepherd. Amen. He says, listen, verse 1. If you don't enter the sheepfold by the door, but climb in some other way, you're not a shepherd, you're a thief and a robber. In a few verses, he's going to tell us what that door is, because he is the door. And if you don't come through Jesus, if you try to come in a different way, then you're just a thief and a robber. So Jesus is distinguishing himself from these scribes and Pharisees and priests who were the thieves and the robbers, leading the people astray rather than leading them to Jesus. Verse 2, he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens the gate, opens the door. And the sheep hear his voice. And he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. I love this part of the story as Jesus is telling it, because it reminded me of my grandfather calling the cows. Now there's a difference between cows and sheep. You know how I know that? Because as I grew older, my grandfather, I lived on the farm for a year, for a summer during the high school, and I worked on the farm. And anything my granddad needed, I would, go and do it. I was his helper. And so, if the cows needed feeding, guess who got to do the feeding? And so, when he wanted to go out and call the cows, I got to go out and call the cows. But all I had to do was what he did. The bucket, and one of the things he had an old beat up truck. And that bucket, he could clang it against the door, and they'd hear that bucket clanging. And then they'd hear the call. And so I just emulated what my grandfather did, and guess what happened? Here come the cows. They're only interested in what's in that bucket. They're interested in the feed. They weren't interested in who it was calling them, as long as there was feed in the bucket when they came, right? But sheep are different. God made them different. There's a video clip. Is that the next thing on there? Okay. There's a video clip that I want to show you. Just a random experiment that was being done. And I don't know who did this. I found the clip. I thought, well, that's perfect. In this clip, you're going to see that there's a sheep farm. There's a shepherd. Now, he's not dressed up, with the staff and like we think of the shepherds. And I mean, this is a modern day shepherd, in just some other country. And so the person who's doing the filming is trying to get different people to call the sheep. Watch what happens with this.
One more time.
Oh, one is.
Louder!
Tika, 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 tika. Tika, 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 tika. Tika, tika. Tika, tika, tika. Ayoko.
Look at them, look at them.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
They are coming. Oh my God. Woo! Oh my God. I can't believe it. Oh my God. These two white boys. Oh my God. This is amazing. One more.
You scared them.
Yeah, Eunice made him go away.
Oh my God.
Was that cool or what?
Oh my God.
You will never have the same again.
Oh my God. I can't believe the way they were coming.
The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. Isn't that a great little illustration? When Jesus comes calling, do you hear him? Are you listening for his voice? He's come to call us out, to guide us wherever he wants to go. That's his prerogative. Wherever he wants to lead, however he wants to use us out in the world, in his community. We're the sheep. We're not shepherds. We're the sheep, and we've got to listen to his voice. And that begs the question. It begs the question for them, and it does for us today. Am I following his lead? That's what Jesus wanted to get these folks gathered in the crowd to begin to understand. Will you follow my lead when I tell you I'm the good shepherd? Are we following his lead? Do we go to him daily saying, Lord, what do you want to do in my life today? Do you go to his word? Remember back in chapter 8, if you abide in my word, then what? You'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Because you're going to Him, looking for guidance from Him, and He shares that truth, and that truth frees you to go and do what He's called you to do. So, Jesus is setting the stage by describing what would happen in the daily routine of a shepherd and his sheep when the sheep are in the fold, but now it's morning. It's time to get out and get busy. It's time to go, and he's going to lead. So he's the door, and he comes. He tells the gatekeeper to open up, and the sheep come and they follow him. That's the morning routine of the sheep. Now, folks would have got that. They would have understood exactly what he was describing. But then, look at verse 7. So Jesus again said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Jesus. Listen, this is another of the I am statements. I am the door. The 7 I am statements of Jesus in the Gospel of John. Here it is again. I am the door. Some have come to lead you. And they're not the shepherd. Some who should have been shepherds had really become the opposite of what they should have been. Rather than feeding and leading the people, they became those who stole and killed and destroyed, leading the people astray. Of course, we know that's also a description of the anti-shepherd, the anti-Christ. The Lord Jesus is the good shepherd, and of course Satan would do anything in his power to do the opposite. But what would these people have known when Jesus began to talk about those who should have been shepherds and they're not, and those who are really thieves and they've led the people astray? What would the people have immediately begun to think about? If they turned their minds back to the prophets of the Old Testament, possibly their thoughts would have gone back to Ezekiel chapter 34. Let me share this passage with you. This is a very telling prophecy from God against the priests, the leaders, those who should have been shepherding the flock. Ezekiel 34, verse 6 and following, God says to the shepherds who should have been shepherding his people, my sheep are scattered. They wandered all over the mountains and on every high hill, with none to search or seek for them. Therefore you shepherds heard the word of the Lord, or hear the word of the Lord, as I live, declares the Lord God, surely because my sheep have become a prey, and my sheep have become food for all the wild beasts, since there was no shepherd, and because my shepherds have not searched for my sheep, but the shepherds have fed themselves and have not fed my sheep. Therefore you shepherds hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord God, behold, I am against the shepherds, and I will require my sheep at their hand, and put a stop to their feeding the sheep. No longer shall the shepherds feed themselves. I will rescue my sheep from their mouths, that they may not be food for them. For thus says the Lord God, behold, I myself will search for my sheep and seek them out. As a shepherd seeks out his own flock, when he is among his sheep that have been scattered. So will I seek out my sheep, and I will rescue them from all places where they've been scattered on the day of clouds and thick darkness. Surely, these Jews from the first century would have remembered these words of Ezekiel and his prophecy against the shepherds who should have been shepherding. But Jesus says, I'm not like that. No, I'm the good shepherd. I'm the way, I'm the door. My sheep will be well cared for. What good is a door? In this context, the door is there for protection. After the sheep had gone out from mourning, out of the sheep pen, and taken out into the pasture, later in the day, they would be gathered back together. There would be either a small cave in the side of a hill, or possibly the shepherds would gather stones from the area and build a pen. And then the shepherd himself out in the fields at the temporary sheep pen that was made out there for resting at night, the shepherd would lay himself down across that gate. He would be the gate. He would be the protection for his sheep. And that's what Jesus is saying that he is. As good shepherd, Jesus is our guard. Not only is he our guide to lead us out into the pastures, he's our guard to protect him. And the question is, do I trust him completely? Or do I trust in other things? I try to make my own way in this world. Jesus, I've got this. I know a good spot over here at your grace. I think we've all been there. We've all gone our separate ways. In fact, Scripture says that we are all like sheep who have gone astray. So, Jesus lays himself down as the gate, as the protector, as the guard for his people. Listen, we should rest secure in that. No matter what happens in your life, if you'll come to Jesus, if you'll make sure that you're in the fold, you've got a guard who cannot fail. He cannot lose. He cannot be overcome or defeated. He is the kind of guard that well, if I ever had a bodyguard, you know how wealthy people and politicians get bodyguards, right? I got Jesus. I mean, what better bodyguard of the soul? Maybe we should say a soul guard. The body's a part of that too. God, we've got Jesus, the Good Shepherd, who is the door to his sheep pen. He is the guard. And why wouldn't I trust him completely? With every aspect of my life, with every area of my life, with every concern, with health needs, with finance needs, with the turmoil around us in the world, we need a lot of help. Why don't we just turn to Jesus? Why does the world turn to Jesus? Well, if they would listen to his voice and hear him and follow, then they could be his sheep too. And that's part of our job, is to go out into the fields and tell the good news. We have a shepherd. We have a shepherd who guides, and he can never be wrong. So however he leads and however he guides is always right. We just got to follow his lead. We have a shepherd who always guards and takes care of his own. All we've got to do is just trust him completely. But there's a third part of shepherding that Jesus brings up. And we'll pick up again at verse 11. When Jesus makes the second I am statement, I am the good shepherd. I'm it. I'm the one that the Old Testament spoke of. All that talk of shepherding is fulfilled in me. So he says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd who does not own the sheep sees a wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. The wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he's a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. And I am a good shepherd. I know my own sheep and my own know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold, and I must bring them also. They will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. Of course, there was again division among them. Verse 19 says, among the Jews because of these words. And many say, well, he has a demon. Of course, they've used that excuse before, not to believe. Some said, well, he's insane. Why listen to him? But others said, these are not the words of one who's oppressed by a demon. And the demon opened the eyes of the blind. They still remember. They haven't forgotten what he did for the blind man. Surely this guy is more than that. He's more than a prophet. He's more than a priest. He is the good shepherd. As a good shepherd, Jesus is the one who gives. What does he give? He gave his everything. He gave his life. Now, folks from the first century would have known that, again, in the routine of shepherding the sheep, in the morning the sheep would have been led out in the pasture. In the evening they would have been brought into the pen. And the shepherd would have laid himself down as the door, as the gate. But during the night, during that time of when there's darkness, and the shepherd is guarding, he's also giving. He's giving himself to take up for his sheep. In the first century Israel, we know from the stories in Scripture that there were lions and tigers and bears. I knew that was coming. I mean, literally, Scripture tells us that David fought a lion, he fought a bear. Another one of his servants fought off a tiger, killed a tiger. So there were wild animals. Historians tell us, in my study in this text, talked about there were jackals, there were hyenas, there were all kinds of wild beasts that were willing and ready to take the sheep, to snatch the sheep, wolves, to come in and snatch away one of the sheep. And Jesus says, I'm going to put my life on the line. I'm going to give. I'm going to give my life. I'm going to lay down. Nobody is forcing me to do this. It is a mistake to believe that the Romans put Jesus to death. It's a mistake to believe that the Jews really put Jesus to death. Now, they are the ones who condemned him to die and nailed him to a cross and put a spear in his side. They did all of those things, but Jesus gave his life. Scripture tells us that he could have called down 10,000 angels, a legion of angels, to wipe out and destroy anyone who would cause him any harm. At a moment's notice, can you just imagine those angels in heaven, just ready, on alarms, just say the word, Jesus, we're coming. Jesus says, no. I lay down my life for my sheep. As we begin to think about this coming season, and yes, I'll go ahead and bring up Christmas. Even the Old Testament prophecies about the coming Savior had the analogy of sheep and shepherd built right in. Listen to this. You may be familiar with the prophecy about Bethlehem from Micah chapter 5. But listen about the shepherd and the sheep. Micah prophesied in chapter 5, verse 2 and following. But you, O Bethlehem, Ephrathah, who are little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose origin is from old, from ancient days. Therefore, he shall give him up until the time when she who is in labor has given birth. Then the rest of his brothers shall return to the people of Israel. And here's verse 4. And he shall stand and shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord. Right there in the prophecy of the coming Messiah, he would come from Bethlehem. He would shepherd his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and they shall dwell secure, for now he shall be great to the ends of the earth. And again in Isaiah's prophecy in chapter 40, verses 9 through 11, get up to a high mountain, O Zion. Herald the good news. Remember the Christmas song? Go tell. Lift up your voice with strength, O Jerusalem. Herald the good news. Lift it up and fear not. Say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold, the Lord God comes with might, and his arm rules for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his recompense before him. Verse 11, he will tend his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs in his arms. He will carry them in his bosom, and gently lead those who are with young. You have the first coming, you have the second coming. The first coming in Bethlehem, he's coming as a shepherd to lead his flock. And guess what? In the second coming, when he comes with power, and the world says, behold your God, he will be coming to tend his flock. He's going to gather his lambs gently in his arms. Oh, what a day that will be. He is the good shepherd. He is our guide. Let's follow him. Let's give up everything to follow him. He is our guard. Why would we want to trust in anything? Trust in him completely. He is the giver. He's given his own life. Have I received his goodness? Have I received this grace. The beautiful thing about God's grace is that while it's a one-time thing in the sense of salvation, it's an everyday thing in the sense that Jesus says, my grace is sufficient for your every need. Every day. My grace, my mercy is near. So in these coming days, as we look to the coming of the Savior, would you commit to being all in for Him, following Him as the God, the Good Shepherd, letting Him guard over your heart and your soul, your mind, like Philippians 4 says, in Christ Jesus, with His peace. Would you recognize that He is the giver? In the season of giving, He gave the one thing that made the difference for all eternity. He gave His life. As a good shepherd, He laid down His life for His sheep. But He also said, I have the power to take judgment. And that He did, and He's coming again. Will you bow down?